श्री सच्चिदानंद सद्गुरु साईनाथ महाराज की जय। सद्गुरु श्री साईनाथ निशरद बाबूजी की जय। Rose Petals, Volume 5, Chapter 3. The Role of Ritual. Devotee. What is meant by puja? Guruji. Anything you do to express your love, that is puja, that is worship. Devotee. When I was back home and went to the synagogue where my family used to go when I was a child, it felt like the love was missing and some people were doing the rituals just for the sake of ritual. Guruji. Traditions can become like that, not only in the Jewish tradition, but in all religions. When the rituals started, they conveyed some meaning, but during the course of time, they can lose their meaning and become mechanical, just dead wood. Saints come in order to breathe life into them again. And that is what Jesus said, I have come not to destroy the law, but to fulfill it. He was not opposing the Jewish tradition. He was only saying it had become so ritualized that he wanted to infuse love and meaning into it. Another tradition began, Christianity, and after some time, it too became ritualized. From time to time, different saints have come in order to enliven the traditions, and it's still going on. It's the same in India. When the Vedic tradition became too ritualized, the Buddha came, Mahavira came, later Shankara came, then Ramanuja. Again, when there was a need for reform, the saints of the Gokarnath tradition came, and now Sai Baba has come. After some time, the Sai tradition will also become so ritualized, no doubt about it, that again another form will come to rejuvenate it. This is the course of history. If rituals simply become mechanical, without meaning, then you can throw them away. Sometimes, though, by going back and reenacting them, they may start triggering something in you. If you have no other way, that may be the last resort to trigger your emotions and to nurture them. Devotee. Is a new emotion triggered each time? Guruji. Yes. What gets triggered, your emotional response, is not exactly the same as the emotion that originally inspired the ritual. When a composer writes a piece of music after disappointment in love, the content will be sorrowful. But when you are listening to his music, you may feel the mood of sorrow but not the disappointment. Instead, some experience from your past may be triggered, like the loss of a friend or a relative. When you understand this, you will understand the true meaning of ritual. Then you will cease to see these things as simple cultural whims. Devotee. Sometimes I don't feel like bowing down to somebody, but I make myself do it. I'm doing it because I want to feel something afterwards, which I don't feel before I perform the action. Then I feel guilty that I'm not doing it for the right reasons. Guruji. This is how it works. That's what I was talking about. If you understand the principle behind the ritual, then you won't feel guilty about it anymore. When you want to nurture an emotion, you have to express it. If you are not interested in devotion or you don't want to show your love, you don't have to worry about it and need not bow down in front of your object of love. But if you want to love and if you want to nurture that love, then these things will act as aids. Then they have some meaning. Otherwise, any ritual is meaningless, whatever it is. Devotee. So are you saying that ritual can actually invite the experience? Guruji. Yes, it can. For example, when we experience devotional love and we feel on the verge of losing it, then sometimes a ritual can help us remain in that state. But if we simply start repeating the ritual again and again, it becomes ritualistic. Then the danger of losing that experience is greater than evoking the state through the ritual. So I don't stress ritual, but I don't object to it also. It has its own place, its own role, its own utility, and we should relate to it like this. Certain expressions that come spontaneously can give us happiness and increase our love. Later, in moments when we don't experience that love, the mind thinks that maybe by repeating them, we'll feel that happiness again. Sometimes it works. They become our own rituals, not the standard ones from a book. Everyone has their own rituals. I have my own too. Devotee. So there is a place for effort in that case? Guruji. I don't call it effort. If you call it effort, no problem, but it's actually an expression of your love. If you want the experience back again, you'll act in a way to repeat it. That's different from having an idea, a concept that this ritual is good, and by doing it, you'll get that experience. Simply mumbling a mantra to get an experience has no meaning. If you connect with it in a meaningful way, then it is good. Some of the things that we think of as rituals come out of a kind of social interaction. If we go to a temple, for instance, certain procedures of paying respect are there and we follow them. I don't have any objection to that. Devotee. Guruji, should we follow any particular mode of worship? Guruji, I don't have any mode of worship. My mode is the expression of love. I don't want to give a discourse on the Hindu agamas because it's not my way. I don't have any problem with formal modes of worship. There's nothing wrong with them, but they're not so imperative. There are many ways to worship. You can use any expression which comes to your mind naturally and spontaneously. Devotee. But it has to be appropriate to the culture, Guruji, doesn't it? Guruji. It's not a question of culture but of social sensibility, of not offending anyone where you are. Even when you're in the West, you have to behave in a certain way. You haven't come here to learn the details of ritual and the prescribed ways of expressions of love. You have come here to experience the love itself. First, have the love, then we'll think about how to express it. Devotee. Guruji, we Westerners make a lot of mistakes and at times offend Indian sentiments. Why, for instance, is it considered to be disrespectful to point our feet towards the Guru or the deity? Guruji, just think about it. The feet are the lowest part of our body and are always in contact with the dirt. So, pointing the lowest part of ourselves towards a respected person is not respectful. What is the most precious part of our body? Our head. You can live without a leg, you can live without a hand, but you can't live without your head. That is the most valuable part. So, when you give your respect to a saint, you touch the lowest part of his body, his feet, with the most precious and valuable part of yours. That shows utmost respect and humility. I am not even equal to the lowest part of you, and this is the most precious thing I can offer. It allows us to feel the magnitude of the saint. That is why the custom of bowing and touching one's head to the feet of a respected person has emerged. Even in English, you have the expression to be at someone's feet. I learnt it at the feet of my mentor, you say. Or, I've put everything at her feet, meaning you've given your most precious things to her or you're at her disposal. Whatever the ritual in whatever religion, don't follow it simply because it is a custom. If it expresses your love in a genuine way, then do it. Then it becomes a meaningful ritual. Every society has their standard expressions that people grow up with. When their emotion, their love is awakened, the old rituals become the tools or means to express it. New tools of expression are not often given or easily found, So they adopt the old ways that they knew before or the ones in the culture that surrounds them. In some ways, it is good since the mind need not bother with finding new and different expressions. For instance, someone experiences love and respect for me and they want to show it. How do they show it? In our culture, they have been told to do namaskar, to touch the feet. Before, they may have done it at the temple or at home, but without emotion. Now, with emotion, they can adopt the old ways they know from before and express their love through them authentically. Devotee. I once heard you say that it is enough sadhana just to remember Baba. Really? Is just remembering Baba enough? Guruji. That question itself shows your understanding. Is it enough? First, do it and then tell me. Just do that enough. As if it was such a simple thing to always remember Baba. Is it enough? Just that sadhana? Do it. If it is not enough, I will tell you. Yes, in my view, it is enough just to remember Baba. Devotee. Then why are so many practices given to devotees? Guruji. If I simply say, remember Baba, love Baba, people will do it in different ways. To keep up the remembrance, certain means, some kinds of rituals or disciplines develop. In one way, they're all practices. But once the love, the spirit of inquiry or the need is lost, when the emotions are no longer touched, then slowly a practice loses its life and vitality. Devotee. So the practices are there to maintain that remembrance? Guruji. Originally, they were meant for that. There are two kinds of practices. One is a practice which doesn't seem like a practice. For instance, when your family visits you from the West to see how your life is in India, they find you coming to my house in the morning and washing dishes and sweeping the floor. They ask, is this the practice that you are doing? What do you say? Is it a practice? No. Then, what is it? How is it different from when you sweep the floor at your own house? People have their own ways of connecting, and different practices emerge to help them connect. But there is a tendency for the outward forms to become more important, and so the spirit gets lost. Some new person comes and thinks, oh, here with Guruji, the main practice is washing dishes, and so she starts asking, may I also come and wash dishes? And then somebody will say that since she is not used to it, she should apprentice with some senior, experienced person. So for her, it becomes a practice. And then slowly over time, some people will move on to another place, set up an ashram and say, what Guruji taught was washing dishes and sweeping the floor. That is the means to realization. And then they'll build a meditation hall with dishes and brooms inside. People will come, take the brooms, then sweep for 1 or 2 hours. It's a practice. Then brooming practices and techniques will sweep the world. Oh, Guruji is the discoverer of a new technique for enlightenment. Slowly, it will go on like that, and the broom will become our emblem, our symbol. Everyone will be wearing a broom badge. Yes, it has happened. It has happened in all the religions. I am not simply joking. Many practices you see now in the different religions came about just like that. At some point in the past, a realized soul asked a disciple to do a certain thing to express his love and connect, which then later was only emulated, and then after years and years, they became practices. Devotee. Guruji, I'm not sure I understood you correctly yesterday. Did you say when you were talking about our connection with the Sadguru that having the desire for this connection is the contact? Guruji. The desire itself is the contact. Desire doesn't remain passive, it's very dynamic. It always wants to put itself into action in some way or other, It always struggles. So the struggle to find different ways of being in contact will be there. If we repeat these forms of contact and they become ritualized after some time, the forms can be mistaken for the contact. For example, if you make a daily call to Shirdi, "Hello, please convey my namaskar to Guruji," the ritual is over. You have to create something that makes your call more meaningful, more relevant. Otherwise, after a few days, it becomes merely a ritual. Human beings are so capable of making anything into a ritual. Devotee. Baba says, "He who never eats food before offering it to me, I am his slave. I have a hard time remembering to do it, but it seems like I'm forgetting something important. Is it really so important?" Guruji. Don't think of it. Devotee. But I do. Guruji. Then try to understand. And if you really feel that you can't understand and it's so alien to you, simply don't bother about it. Don't worry about it. But you yourself are saying that you want to remember Baba. When you're hungry and hankering after food, usually you forget the moment you get it because you're thinking only of your personal need. If even at that moment you think of your beloved, how much you must be remembering him. You may think of Baba when you don't get food, but the moment you get it, you forget him. Here Baba says, don't forget even in that moment. Devotee. Please tell me how to remember it. Guruji. If you really love Baba, you'll remember. That's all. For instance, if you see a piece of cake, the thought immediately comes, "Oh, I'd like my beloved to taste it." If that doesn't spontaneously come to mind, then do it as an exercise. Eventually, even when you see the most delicious food, it will be as if you're looking at a stone. There will be no reactions in your mind. The best way to achieve this is to let the love grow in you. When it grows, it happens automatically, spontaneously, without your being aware of it. It just happens. Even if you see the most delicious food, first you think, "Oh, how nice it would be if Guruji could eat it." Not after eating, saying, "Ah, that was so tasty," and then, "Okay, we can offer it to him also." Not like that. That is the second grade. But if you don't think of it, no problem. So, again, even in this, even though it seems such a great yoga, it comes naturally to those in whose hearts the love is triggered. They are doing that yoga. Once love is triggered, everything becomes meaningful, even if you don't understand it intellectually. Of all the senses, taste is the most difficult to conquer. That's why Yogi Vemana also said, "One who has conquered the palate has conquered it all." Devotee. Ramana would mix everything together without distinction. Guruji. Baba also used to do that. He used to take all the bhiksha in one pot, mix it up, and then eat it. Devotee. Does conquered mean not to have any pull towards taste? Guruji. Yes, no pull towards taste. Italian pizza? See how immediately your mind gets excited. And if I say gongura or avakai pickle, immediately the Andhra mind imagines the taste. That is why when someone mentions a delicacy, you experience your mouth watering because mentally you are already trying to taste it and the body responds like that. That subtle desire we have to conquer. Even if you see wonderful pictures of your favorite dish, your mind should not imagine the taste. It should be just like how you feel when you're looking at this chair or glass. That is real conquering. Try. We'll see how weak you are. Not that we shouldn't eat all those delicacies, but we should be aware of how we relate to them and how they impact us. That is what we should free ourselves from. Saint Ramdas says in his beautiful poetry, "Oh, how delectable Rama is your name. The rasa that I get from your name, I enjoy so much. The aesthetic enjoyment I feel is greater than the rasas of all these delicacies. And he gives a long list of delicious items, saying that Rama's name is more tasty than each one. In fact, more tasty than all of them together. If we really absorb this poem, then whenever we look at delicacies, we will immediately remember that they are delicious, no doubt, but the name of our beloved is even more delectable. That's how we can relate every aspect of our life to our object of love. Shri Sachidananda Sadguru Sainath Maharaj Ki Jai. Sadguru Shri Sainath Nisharat Babu Ji Ki Jai.